He rented out an entire botanical garden, filled it with my favorite flowers, and got down on one knee. I said yes. Then he shattered my heart 2 days later. The box was Tiffany blue. I know that's a cliché, but when you see it in person, held in the trembling hands of the man you love under the string lights of a rooftop garden, it doesn't feel like a cliché. It feels like destiny finally keeping a promise. The ring inside was an oval solitaire on a delicate gold band. It was perfect. Not too big, not too small. Elegant. He'd remembered everything I'd ever casually mentioned. My name is Sophie. I was 28, a copywriter at a mid-sized advertising firm living in a city that felt perpetually on the verge of either a breakdown or a breakthrough. His name was Leo. We'd been together for 3 years, 2 months, and, as of that night, 17 days. We met at a friend's disastrous Halloween party where he was dressed as a very unconvincing zombie, and I was a frustrated Wednesday Addams. He made me laugh by pretending to lurch after other guests, and we spent the rest of the night in a corner, talking about everything from our favorite obscure films to our mutual hatred of pumpkin spice lattes. Leo was a software engineer with the soul of a poet. He was steady, thoughtful, the human equivalent of a weighted blanket. He remembered my coffee order, massaged my shoulders after long days, and had a calming presence that balanced my own more anxious, energetic nature. Our relationship wasn't without its bumps: a disagreement about how often to visit his overbearing mother, my occasional jealousy over his close female work friend, the stress of saving for a future that seemed both tantalizingly close and impossibly far away, but it was solid. We talked about marriage often in that abstract, someday way. When we have a house, at our wedding, our kids will never. The proposal itself was a masterpiece of understated romance. It was a cool Friday evening in October. He'd told me to dress nicely, that he'd made reservations at our favorite Italian place. But instead of driving to the restaurant, he'd driven to the city's botanical gardens, which were closed for a private event. Our private event, it turned out. He'd rented the entire rooftop conservatory. It was filled with my favorite flowers, peonies, even though they were out of season. There was a single small table, champagne on ice. The city glittered below us. He didn't get down on one knee, he just held both my hands, his eyes suspiciously bright, and said, "Sophie, you are the most brilliantly unexpected person I have ever met. You turned a zombie apocalypse into the best night of my life. My future is a blank page, and I only want to write it with you. Will you marry me?" I was crying before he even finished. I said yes. I shouted yes. He slid the perfect ring onto my finger, and it fit as if it had been waiting for me. We drank champagne. We called our parents, our screams of joy echoing in the glass-domed space. My mother sobbed. His father shouted, "Finally!" We posted a tasteful, blurry photo of our intertwined hands, the ring gleaming, the city lights a bokeh background. My phone exploded with notifications. We were the protagonists of our own love story, and we had just reached the best plot point. The next 36 hours were a golden haze. We spent Saturday in a blissful daze, showing off the ring to our closest friends over brunch mimosas, making lists of potential venues, arguing playfully about whether we'd have a band or a DJ. That night, we went to a party at his colleague's house. I floated through the rooms, my left hand somehow always in motion, catching the light. I was Sophie, Leo's fiancé. The words tasted like champagne and forever. Leo was quieter than usual at the party, but I chalked it up to proposal hangover, the crash after an emotional high. He held my hand, smiled when people congratulated him, but his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. "He's just tired," I told my best friend, Jess, in the kitchen. "And he hates big parties, you know Leo." Jess, ever the pragmatist, eyed him across the room. "He looks like he's solving a difficult coding problem, not celebrating his engagement." I laughed. "He's an engineer, that's his resting face."
Sunday morning, the dream began to develop a faint hairline crack. We were in our pajamas, surrounded by wedding magazines and half-empty coffee cups, a scene of perfect domestic bliss. I was gushing about a barn venue I'd found online. "Look at these beams, Leo, and the string lights. We could do a fall wedding just like this. Pumpkins, but tasteful ones, not the cheesy ones." He was staring at his phone, his brow furrowed. He hadn't been listening. "Leo? Earth to Fiancé?" He looked up, startled. "Sorry, work thing." "On Sunday morning?" "A server's down in Singapore. It's a whole thing." He put his phone face down, a little too deliberately. "The barn looks great, Soph." But the energy had shifted. A cold little draft had blown into our warm bubble. He was distant, preoccupied. I told myself it was work. He was a problem solver. He couldn't help but fixate. We ordered takeout for lunch, and he barely touched his food. The crack widened. Then, as we were cleaning up, the phone rang. It was his mother, Carla. I heard his side of the conversation from the living room, his voice low and tense. "Yes, Mom, we're sure. No, we didn't rush. I know what you said, but can we not do this right now? It's not a mistake." He came back into the kitchen, his face pale. "His mom," he said, by way of explanation. "Is she not happy?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Carla had always been challenging, warm the moment, frosty the next. She once told me my career was cute. "She's concerned," he said. "Thinks it's fast. Thinks we're too young. We're 28 and 30, and we've been together over 3 years." I know, I told her that, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at my hand, at the ring, as if it were a complicated equation he'd suddenly realized he'd solved incorrectly. The draft became a chill. The golden haze evaporated, leaving behind the stark, flat light of a regular Sunday afternoon. And in that light, Leo looked like a stranger wearing my fiancé's face. He didn't touch me for the rest of the day. He didn't call me fiancé. He retreated into a silence so thick I could feel its weight. By evening, the crack wasn't just a crack, it was a chasm, and we were standing on opposite sides, not speaking its name. I went to bed early, clutching my left hand to my chest, the ring cold against my skin. He stayed on the couch, saying he had to monitor the Singapore server issue. I lay awake for hours, listening to the silence of the apartment, a silence that now felt ominous, charged. The ring on my finger, which had felt like a part of me for 2 days, now felt heavy, foreign. A terrible, icy knowing began to creep in. This wasn't about work. This wasn't just about his mother. Something was profoundly wrong. I just didn't know that when the sun rose, he would ask for the symbol of our future back, and that he would do it in the most devastatingly mundane way possible.
Monday morning arrived gray and damp, matching the atmosphere in our apartment. I'd slept in fitful bursts, my dreams full of chasing a Tiffany blue box that kept tumbling off the edge of the rooftop garden. Leo was already up, dressed for work, making coffee with a grim efficiency. The normalcy of the scene, the gurgle of the coffee maker, the scent of dark roast, him in his standard Monday button-down, was a grotesque parody of our former life. "Morning," I said, my voice tentative. "Morning." He didn't turn around. He poured 2 mugs, handed me one without meeting my gaze. His hand brushed mine and he flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible recoil that felt like a slap. "Leo," I said, the panic I'd been holding back all night finally breaking through. "Talk to me, please. You've been a ghost since last night. Is it your mom? Did she say something else?" He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness, it was a kind of hollow, panicked resignation, the look of a man who'd painted himself into a corner. "It's not just my mom," he said, his voice flat. "We need to talk, Soph, but not now. I have a critical deployment at 9. Can we talk tonight, after work?" A talk, the two most terrifying words in the English language, second only to "we need." The engagement ring felt like a lead weight pulling my whole arm down. "Talk about what?" I whispered. "Leo, you're scaring me." He just shook his head, a quick, pained movement. "Tonight, I promise. I need to think, and I can't be late." He grabbed his backpack, gave me one last agonized look, and was out the door before I could say another word. I called in sick to work. There was no universe in which I could sit at my desk and brainstorm toothpaste ad copy. I was trapped in my own home, a museum of our relationship that had suddenly become a crime scene. Every object felt like evidence. The couch where we'd cuddled, the photo of us hiking in Vermont, the silly mug he'd bought me that said "World's Okayest Girlfriend," a joke because he said I was the best. Now, I felt like the world's most gullible idiot. I called Jess. She came over within 20 minutes bearing emergency pastries and a no-nonsense expression. "Okay, start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." I recounted everything: the perfect proposal, the blissful Saturday, the party where he was quiet, the call with his mother, the chilling distance of Sunday, the haunted look in his eyes this morning. Jess listened, her face growing increasingly stormy. "And he said, 'We need to talk?' Like breakup talk?" "I don't know," I wailed, tears finally spilling over. "It doesn't make sense. He just proposed. He planned the whole thing. The flowers, the venue. That's not something you do on a whim." "Unless it is," Jess said quietly. She took my left hand, examined the ring. "Soph, have you checked his phone lately?" The question hung in the air, ugly and inevitable. I had never snooped. I prided myself on trust. But now the idea took root, a poisonous vine. Was there someone else? Had the female work friend, Mara, become more than a friend? Was that the difficult problem he was solving? "I haven't," I said, my voice small. "Do you want to?" I wanted to say no, but the not knowing was worse. I nodded, a movement full of shame. We went to the bedroom. His laptop was on his nightstand. I knew his password. It was the date of our first official date, something I'd once found unbearably sweet. Now it felt like a key to my own torture chamber. My hands shook as I opened it. I went straight to his email. Nothing suspicious. Work, newsletters, a receipt for the ring from Tiffany, a purchase made 6 weeks ago. He had planned it. I checked his Facebook messages. Normal. Instagram DMs? Nothing. "Check his texts," Jess urged. "On his phone. Do you know his iCloud password?" I did. We shared a family plan to save money, another intimacy that now felt like a violation. I logged into iCloud on the laptop. His text messages synced. My heart hammered against my ribs as I scrolled. And there it was. Not with Mara, with his mother, a thread from yesterday after the phone call. "Carla, Mom, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You're not ready. She's not right for you. I knew it the moment I met her. She's too theatrical. You need someone steady." "Mom, stop. I love her." "Do you? Or do you love the idea of her? The idea of being married by 30 like all your friends? Think. Leo, this is forever. Are you sure?" I was sure when I asked. And now? Be honest with yourself before it's too late. A ring can be returned. A divorce is forever. There was a gap of 2 hours. Then, "I don't know anymore." There's your answer. Don't ruin both your lives because you're too proud to admit you rushed. Do the right thing. The words swam on the screen. I don't know anymore. 5 words that unraveled everything. He'd sent them while I was in the next room, looking at barn venues and dreaming of our future. "That witch," Jess spat. "She got in his head. She planted a seed and he watered it." But as I stared at the messages, a colder truth settled over me. His mother was a catalyst, not the cause. The doubt had to have already been there, a tiny crack in his resolve for her words to find purchase. He'd been sure when he asked, but something, the reality of it, the permanence, the pressure, had made him unsure almost immediately. The day passed in a nauseating blur. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sit still. I paced, I cried, I stared at the ring. I took it off, put it back on, took it off again. Its beauty now felt cruel, a shiny mockery of a promise that had already dissolved. At 5:30 p.m., I heard his key in the lock. My entire body went rigid. I was sitting on the couch, the ring off, held tightly in my clenched fist. I'd rehearsed 100 speeches, confrontations, pleas. But when he walked in, looking utterly defeated, all the words died in my throat. He dropped his backpack by the door. He didn't take off his coat. He stood there, in the middle of our living room, and the air grew so thick with dread I could barely breathe. "Sophie," he said, and his voice was ragged. This was it, the talk. I braced myself for the speech, the "it's not you, it's me," the "we want different things." He didn't give a speech. He just looked at my left hand, saw the bare finger, and a flicker of something, pain, relief, crossed his face. Then he said the 7 words that would echo in the hollows of me for years to come. "I think I need the ring back." Time didn't stop. It shattered. The words didn't hang in the air, they fell like shards of glass, embedding themselves in the space between us. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the radiator hissing and the distant wail of a siren. I looked down at my fist, clenched so tight my knuckles were white. I uncurled my fingers. The ring lay in my palm, catching the lamplight, winking cruelly. I looked from it to his face. His expression was one of profound misery, but also a terrible, focused determination. He'd made his decision. All the panic, the hurt, the confusion crystallized into a single, white-hot point of anger. "You need the ring back," I repeated, my voice unnervingly calm. "You need it." "Sophie, please." "No, you don't get to please me." I stood up, the ring still in my palm. "You asked me to marry you. You put this on my finger. You made me call my parents, my friends. You let me post it online for the whole world to see. And now, 48 hours later, you need it back? What you need, Leo, is to explain to me what the hell is happening in your head." He flinched, but stood his ground. "I made a mistake. I got caught up in the moment. I thought I was ready, but I'm not." "The moment?" I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You rented out the botanical gardens. You bought peonies out of season. You planned this for weeks. That's not a moment. That's a premeditated act. Did you change your mind on the drive over? During the champagne? When exactly did your lifelong commitment expire?" His composure cracked. "It's not that simple. The pressure, everyone expecting it, my mom." "Your mom?" The anger boiled over. I'd promised Jess I wouldn't reveal I'd seen the texts, but it was too late. "So this is Carla's doing? She whispered in your ear that I'm too theatrical and you just agreed? You're 30 years old, Leo. Who proposes to someone and then lets their mother unpropose for them?" His color drained from his face. "You went through my phone?" "I went through your iCloud because my fiancé turned into a pod person and I was desperate for an explanation. And I found one. Your mommy told you to get the ring back and you're obeying." "It's not just her," he shouted, his own anger finally surfacing. She said out loud what I was already feeling." The room went silent again. Those words were the real knife, the confession. "What were you feeling? When exactly?" He sank into the armchair, his head in his hands. "At the party, seeing everyone so happy for us, it felt final, real, and I felt trapped. Not by you, but by the whole thing. The wedding, the house, the kids, the forever of it all. And then my mom called, and she articulated the fear I couldn't name. So you're not sure you want me? Or you're not sure you want marriage?"
I don't know, he cried, looking at me with genuine anguish. I love you, Sophie, I do. But forever is forever. What if I change? What if you change? What if we wake up in 10 years and realize this was all a terrible mistake? I stared at him, this man I thought I knew, the poet soul who was terrified of his own future, the steady rock who was in fact quicksand. The love I felt for him didn't vanish, it curdled into something sour and painful. So, your solution, I said slowly, is to create a guaranteed, catastrophic right now mistake to avoid a potential one in 10 years. You're so afraid of a future divorce that you're opting for a present-day heartbreak. That's your brilliant engineering solution? He had no answer. The climax wasn't a scream or a thrown object. It was the quiet, devastating collapse of a shared reality. The future we'd been painting for 2 days, the barn, the string lights, the tasteful pumpkins, dissolved into pixels and blew away. All that was left was this broken man in a chair and me standing with a piece of jewelry that was now just an expensive, meaningless stone. I walked over to the coffee table where the little Tiffany blue box still sat, a relic from a different era. I opened it. The velvet bed was indented with the shape of the ring. I placed the ring back into its precise slot. It settled with a soft, final click. I closed the box. I held it out to him. He looked at it, then at me, his eyes begging for something. Forgiveness, understanding, absolution. Here, I said, my arm steady. Take it. It was never mine. It was always just a loan. He took the box. His fingers brushed mine, and this time it was I who flinched. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you like this. But you did, I said, the numbness beginning to spread, a welcome anesthetic. You meant to propose, and you meant to take it back. You meant both things. The intention doesn't matter. The damage is the same. He stood there, holding the little blue box that contained the wreckage of us. Where do we go from here? He whispered. That was the final revelation. There was no we anymore. The proposal hadn't just been retracted, the entire foundation of our relationship had been exposed as unstable. You can't build a home on fault lines. You go, I said, my voice empty. Take your things. Not tonight, tomorrow. I'll stay at Jess's. Just be gone by the time I get back. I turned and walked to our bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently with a soft, definitive click. I leaned against it, listening to the silence of the apartment, broken only by the sound of one man sobbing on the other side.
The logistical unraveling of a shared life is a special kind of agony. It's grief performed as clerical work. The next morning, true to my word, I packed a suitcase, while Leo sat silent and hollow-eyed on the living room couch, the Tiffany box a conspicuous bulge in his coat pocket. We didn't speak. The air was thick with the ghosts of conversations we'd never have now, about paint colors, about baby names, about retirement plans. Jess's couch became my home for the next 3 weeks. The first week was a blur of tears, benzodiazepines, prescribed by a very concerned doctor, and a deep animal-like shock. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my left hand flying to my finger, searching for a ring that wasn't there, the absence itself a fresh wound. The social fallout was a public execution by 1,000 condolences. I had to tell my parents. My mother, who had sobbed with joy 2 days prior, now sobbed with a heartbreak that felt like my own. How could he? She kept repeating. How could anyone be so cruel? My father, a quiet man, just said, "I'll kill him." With such quiet conviction, I almost believed him. Then came the digital reckoning. The photo of our intertwined hands with the ring. It had garnered 247 likes and 83 comments full of heart emojis and congratulations. I stared at it for an hour before drafting the update. I didn't want to. I wanted to disappear. But the alternative, letting people assume we were planning a wedding while I was sleeping on a friend's couch, was worse. I posted a single sentence: "The engagement is off. I appreciate your kindness and respect for our privacy during this time." Then I turned off notifications and threw my phone across the room. The calls and texts flooded in anyway. I let Jess screen them. Most people were kind. Some were morbidly curious. A few, like Leo's cousin, who I'd considered a friend, sent messages that began with, "I'm sorry, but," and then subtly blamed me for moving too fast, for pressuring him. Those stung the most. Leo and I communicated only through terse, practical texts. He moved his things out over a weekend while I stayed away. He sent a photo of his key on the kitchen counter. "I'm gone. I'm so sorry." I went back to the apartment. It was a tomb, half empty, with strange gaps on the shelves where his books had been, naked walls where his prints had hung. The silence was absolute. I found a single peony pressed in the pages of a book on the coffee table, a souvenir from the rooftop. I threw it away, then fished it out of the trash and burned it in the sink. The professional fallout was its own humiliation. I had to return to work. I'd been off for a week, supposedly with the flu. My colleagues had seen the engagement post. Now I had to walk back in, ringless, and pretend to care about marketing analytics. The pitying looks were a constant low-grade torture. My boss, a well-meaning but awkward man, took me into a conference room and said, "If you need to talk to HR about anything, stress-related," I assured him I was fine. I was a shell. Meanwhile, through the fragile grapevine of mutual friends, snippets about Leo trickled in. He'd taken a sudden leave of absence from work. He'd gone to stay with his parents in another state. His mother, Carla, according to one brave mutual friend, was telling people it was a lucky escape and that I'd never been right for her Leo. The friend said, "She's acting like she won something." The most brutal consequence, however, was the internal one, the complete demolition of my trust in my own judgment. How could I have been so wrong? How could I have looked at this man, shared a bed and a life with him for 3 years, and not seen the catastrophic flaw? I replayed every moment, searching for clues I'd missed. Had he been hesitant when talking about the future? Had he been less than enthusiastic about wedding Pinterest boards? I was an archaeologist of my own ruin, and every memory I unearthed felt like proof of my own blindness. A month after the return of the ring, I received a package, no return address. My heart leapt to my throat. Some pathetic part of me hoped it was a letter, a plea, an explanation that would make it make sense. Inside was a check, a substantial check, for the amount of half our shared savings account plus an extra $5,000. A sticky note was attached in his precise handwriting, "For your half of the apartment deposit and for everything else. I'm so sorry. L." It was guilt money, blood money. I wanted to rip it up, but practicality, the cold friend of the heartbroken, won out. I deposited it. It felt like selling a piece of my dignity, but it also bought me freedom. With that money, I could break the lease on the haunted apartment. The final face-to-face encounter happened at the leasing office of all places. We had to sign the early termination papers together. He looked terrible, thinner, older, with shadows under his eyes. He'd grown a scruffy beard that didn't suit him. "Hi," he said, his voice rough. "Hi." We signed the papers in silence, our hands not touching. As we turned to leave, he finally spoke. "How are you?" I looked at him, this stranger who had held my heart and then handed it back broken. "I'm surviving," I said. It was the truth. "Sophie, I hope you know, it wasn't you, it was me. I have things I need to figure out, about myself, about what I want." I'd heard that line in 100 movies. It always sounded like a cop-out. Hearing it in person, seeing the genuine torment in his eyes, I understood it was simply the truth. He was a man who didn't know himself, and he dragged me to the altar of his confusion. "I know," I said, "but that doesn't make it hurt less. It just makes it more tragic." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. He reached out as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it. "I will always love you in some way." "Don't,"
I said, softly but firmly. That's a gift you don't get to give anymore. Goodbye, Leo. I walked out into the autumn sunlight, leaving him in the dim beige office. I didn't look back. The chapter was closed. The consequences were mine to live with and his to live with separately. Our shared story was over. All that was left was the long, lonely work of building a new one from the rubble.
That was 2 years ago. The sharp, suffocating pain has dulled into a deep, familiar ache, the kind you learn to carry, like an old injury that acts up when it rains. I moved to a new neighborhood, into a bright, sun-drenched apartment that has never known his name. I adopted a cat, a cranky tuxedo named Figaro who hates everyone but me, which feels fitting. The ring money and the guilt check allowed me to pay off my student loans, a bittersweet freedom bought with heartbreak. I threw myself into my career, not out of passion, but out of a need to prove to myself I was more than a discarded fiancé. I got promoted. The work is still just work, but it's mine. I saw Leo once more, about a year ago. I was at an outdoor cinema event with a guy I was dating, a kind, uncomplicated graphic designer named Ben, who liked board games and made no grand, terrifying promises. Leo was there with a woman. She looked steady, calm, theatrical in no way whatsoever. Our eyes met across the crowd. He offered a small, sad smile. I gave a slight nod, then turned back to Ben, who was explaining the rules of Settlers of Catan with endearing intensity. There was no pang, just a quiet recognition, like seeing a landmark from a trip you took long ago. His mother, Carla, I heard through the Whisper Network, is not happy. Leo moved across the country for a new job. He doesn't call home much. The friend who reported this said, "It's like she got exactly what she wanted, you gone, and now she's realized she broke her son in the process." I felt no satisfaction, only a weary sadness. The most profound healing came from an unexpected source: other women. When I finally started talking about what happened, not as a shameful secret, but as a story of survival, women emerged from the woodwork with their own versions. The friend whose fiancé cheated a month before the wedding, the colleague whose partner confessed he wasn't attracted to her anymore after she'd bought her dress, the cousin whose marriage was annulled after 72 hours. My story was not unique. It was a brutal club with secret members everywhere. Our shared whispered confessions became a kind of liturgy, and in speaking them, we took back some of their power. I learned that some proposals aren't questions but panic attacks disguised as romance, that forever can be a terrifying concept for people who haven't figured out their right now, that love, no matter how real, is not always enough to bridge the chasm of one person's fundamental uncertainty. I also learned about my own resilience. I learned I could have my heart publicly broken, my future stolen, my trust obliterated, and still get out of bed, still feed my cat, still meet a deadline, still, eventually, laugh with a friend until my sides hurt. The human spirit is stubborn in its will to find joy, even after it's been told it's not enough. Do I hate him? No. Hate would be a passion, a connection. What I feel is more like a profound disappointment. In him, for his cowardice, and in myself, for not seeing it. But mostly I feel a detached pity. He is a man who will likely spend his life looking for a guarantee where none exists, haunted by the ghost of a perfect proposal and the real woman he couldn't follow through with. As for me, I date. Cautiously. Ben didn't work out, but we ended as friends. I'm clearer now about what I want, and more importantly, what I won't tolerate. I look for consistency over grand gestures, for a man who knows his own mind, even if that mind sometimes changes, as long as the changes aren't about the core of us. The other day, I was cleaning out a closet and found a box of old photos. There we were at that Halloween party, him a goofy zombie, me a scowling Wednesday. We looked so young, so full of hope that hadn't yet been tested. I didn't cry. I smiled a little. That couple was sweet. Their story just ended differently than they planned. He proposed, then asked for the ring back 2 days later. It was the most devastating thing that has ever happened to me, and in a strange way, it was also a gift. It showed him his character before I signed a marriage license, before we bought a house, before we had children.
It showed me my own strength, which was greater than I knew, and it made me understand that a promise is only as strong as the person making it. A diamond might be forever, but some people's convictions are terrifyingly, heartbreakingly temporary. My finger is bare now, but it's my hand and my life, and I am building both into something solid, beautiful, and entirely my own, and that's a resolution I can live with.
Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.